Well, welcome. We are back again for another candid conversation with Sherilyn and Tammy. I'm really excited today because Sherilyn's going to be sharing her testimony about God's provision and how God revealed to her that she wasn't really trusting Him in that area. And this most of this story I haven't heard for myself. So grab a cup of tea or coffee and sit back and join us. Yep, me too. Join us as I get to hear, even for the first time, really the powerful change that God made in your life, right, Sherilyn? And you were going in one direction. What happened?
Yeah, so we talked first, the very first conversation we had about how I lost my job and the significant impact that had on my finances because I was the breadwinner. So that we were living outside of Washington, D.C. My husband was working. I just made more money than he did. And so when I lost my job, we lost 60% of our family's income. So that is a huge hit. And so, you know what happens when something, when your financiers are yanked out from underneath of you. I mean, I got into this place where I was paralyzed by all kinds of questions. And the main one is what if? What if this and what if that? And, umpteenth reasons for why it could go this way or that. And I just can remember very, very clearly that God interrupted all of my anxiety and all of my worry to say, do I still have you? And I didn't know the answer. Because our mind can sometimes become a playground and for the worst possible outcome. We can quickly fall into a pit of paralysis. We can spiral down and we won't do something because of what could happen. The what hasn't happened yet traps us. And I was, in all of the uncertainty, I was captive in and frozen in fear. And to be able to realize that that's what it was, and to have Him, in the midst of all the finances adding up, because math is real, right? It either adds up or it doesn't. And I remember having to, let's just be real. Fake it till you make it. Get up, tell the kids everything's going to be okay. I don't know how God's going to do it, but I did have a trust and a level of faith that He was going to do it. But still, in the face of my anxieties, in the face of my worry, God interrupted me and said, Sherilyn, do I still have you? And He was challenging that place of, do I trust Him? Because it really came down to, I either trust God or I don't. He's either faithful to His word or He isn't. He either will provide or He won't. What did I believe? Because it was going to be the foundation of that belief that was going to get me through that season. And so for those of you that are dealing with, finances, needing God to provide, it comes down to the moment of agreement. Does God still have you? Do you trust Him? Because I can tell you that, probably, I don't know, maybe it was 5-6 years before that, my husband and I were financial coaches through financial ministry in our church. We would teach stewardship on whatever it was, Wednesday night, Tuesday night, to a small group of people. And then we'd walk them through the workbook of how to make a budget and do all this stuff. So we had done all the things to be in what we thought was good stewardship with the Lord. This wasn't a stewardship problem. This was a trust problem. So while there's pieces of things we can do on the stewardship side to make sure you have your savings and you have those types of things in place, thank God that He prepared us in advance and that we did have a savings account with something in it. Because if we didn't have that, it would have been far worse. But at the end of the day, God is still bigger than the problem that we face. God is still bigger. But the enemy kept coming at me with lies to say that God wasn't going to provide. We would get bill after bill after bill, and I wouldn't have enough. And the money program that we used was all red, showing me that there was nothing coming in and everything going out. And, the bank account was going to be over before the bills. And so we're like, I don't know what to do. And to really kind of say, God, I have to trust you. Because I knew in my head all the stewardship stuff. We'd memorized all the verses. We knew where to find them. But were they my foundation that says, God, I trust you like that? And yeah, thank you, Andrea. Amen. Absolutely. Do we trust God like that? And that was kind of where we were. And I had to be able to fully kind of say, okay, I don't know how you're going to do this. I have to trust that you will. And just kind of push it across the table and give the entire pile of bills to God.
And don't you find that while you guys were succeeding and teaching finances, it was easy to say you trusted God?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, that's what we do all the time, right? When things are going well, whether it's we're not messing up, so we believe we're righteous, or if we're doing well financially, that we trust God with our finances until something happens to go, do we really trust him?
And so let's put a pin in that for a little bit further. Perhaps it was, okay, you've been obedient this far. Perhaps this is because there wasn't anything that I necessarily did wrong here. Right. We had entered into a season of obedience where we were trusting God with where our level of faith was. And now this trial, this storm comes at us, and we're being asked, invited to trust God at a different level. Now, I remember so powerfully hearing this quote from Graham Cook. He's like my spiritual dad. I've adopted him. We've never met in person, but he doesn't know that he's my adopted father. And he was talking about it. He's a minister. He was itinerant speaker for a long time. And I remember him talking about how he was trusting God to make payroll for his ministry staff. And there was a certain dollar value. The dollar value doesn't matter for this conversation. But the end of the day is he's like, I'm trusting God for this amount of money. And at the last minute, of course, at the last minute, the 11th hour and 59 minutes, right? It shows up. And he says at that moment, that became his floor. He never had to doubt God for anything less than that dollar amount because he knew that God had provided up to whatever that was. So I want to challenge those of you who are listening. Where is your floor? What have you seen God do? Because I can tell you over the past, it's been 8 years now, over the past 8 years, my floor with my number of where I'm trusting God for has gone up and up and up. So let me give you a testimony of how this has happened. Yes, Shirley, you're right. Those are the times we find out if we really trust him, when we're in that crucible, that moment. So when we're realizing we have to trust God for a specific dollar amount, I remember getting my electric bill in this season 8 years ago, and it was for a certain amount. And then, by the end of that week, I got a check in the mail from Costco. Did I tell this story already? I can't remember. Okay, so I get this check from Costco that was the exact same amount plus extra. So now I know that I don't have to worry about whatever that amount is because God's going to provide up to that. So fast forward now, this was probably it was earlier this year. So earlier this year, we have a company come out to check our air conditioning. Did I tell this too?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. So we have this company come out. I know I did a live on my own channel. I just don't remember if I shared it with you. But anyway, like friends do, we repeat stories and we're yes and nod like we've never heard it before. So we had this company come out to check our air conditioning, right? And so they come out, they do the check, and he's coming in and out of the house, and I'm sitting on the porch, and he's coming in and out, and I'm like, good grief, this is taking forever. And he finally pulls my husband aside, and he says, okay, so this unit has a leak, that unit has a leak, because our house has 2 air conditioners, and we're like, And he says, and it's going to be, $2,500 a piece to fix these. I'm like, what? So I go to my prayer closet, and for those of you who have followed me for a while, that's my shower. And I stand in the shower, and I'm just standing there before the Lord, and it's just raining down water on me, right? And so I'm just standing there, and I'm pouring it out to God, and I'm just in my declarations and decrees, like, God, I don't have this. I'm going to rebuke the devourer, and I'm calling on the angels of heaven to come and fix the air conditioning. I'm doing all the things that I know to do, right? And so the very next day, they call to what we think is to schedule a repair. This is what we thought they were calling for. And my husband's like, yep, okay. And I'm like, He gets off the phone and he says, oh yeah, that's important to us. We need to get that done. Let's schedule this. And so that's what I'm thinking. And he gets off the phone and he says, what did you do? I'm like, what did I do? He goes, what did you do? And I said, he goes, you prayed, didn't you? I'm like, well, yes, of course I prayed. And so here I was in my in my prayer closet, praying to God about this whole thing, taking it to him, no anxiety about it, just saying, God, this is yours. If we have to find $5,000 to fix this air conditioning unit, you're going to provide for it, or it's just going to go away. Well, the guy's gauges were broken. And so I didn't have to pay $5,000 because it was wrong. And so, but I took the whole issue and I took it to God. So now my floor is what? $5,000. I don't have to, I can either trust God to make the situation go away, or I trust God to provide the amount. So I just want to give you an idea of what it was for my electric bill has now grown to $5,000 of trusting God. And so it's really a matter of, I don't have to worry about what's in my bank account. I look at my provider and I say, hey, this is yours. You've got to fix this because I don't have it. And I love how the word says all the gold and silver is his. And then he says he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. So that means he could just sell one of those cows or whatever. He's got what I need, all the resources. He is my source. And if he is my source, then he can make sure I have the resources for everything that I need. And so I want to expand your vision for provision, to not necessarily think that it's always necessarily money, because it's not. I remember in this season when we needed, I needed to put clothes, I need to buy clothes for my kids. And then we get this gift card to TJ Maxx from a doctor who we referred another patient to. He sent us a gift card to say thank you. Well, that's kind of money, but no, it's not. It was clothes on my kid's back, all kinds of different ways that God provides for us financially when we're looking for it. And I know this is just my story. You and your husband have a story about, the lie about believing that we believed about the enemy saying he's not going to provide for you, and showing that he was. So what was going on with you?
Well, it's funny. You just reminded me of a couple stories from when I first got saved. And when I first got saved, I was on my own. And we moved into this 1-bedroom apartment, and me and a roommate had to divide the room. So we put up bookshelves to divide the room. But the problem was we only have one bathroom. And so she'd be getting ready to go to work. I'd be getting ready to go to work, and I needed to get ready. So what we did is I said, you know what? If you're getting ready, then I can set up a area over here and I'll get my makeup on. But I couldn't see because, we've got everything covered with bookshelves to try to divide the room. And I thought, well, they have those lighted mirrors, and I went and looked at one, and I couldn't afford them. I was kind of shocked at how expensive they were, the little lighted magnifying window mirrors. And I was like, Lord, I need this because, we're having a conflict of trying to get ready. And I'm not kidding you. I worked for a dentist at the time. And I walked into the office. I was the office manager. I go to get everything set up and start the day. And I walk in, and there's a lighted mirror, not in a box, just a lighted mirror in one of the exam rooms. And I walked over to him and I asked the doctor, I'm like, what is this? And where did it come from? And whose is it? And he goes, I have no idea. It was just in there. And I was like, can I have it? And he's like, sure. I don't know whose it is. This day, I do not know who and how. And I asked everybody that worked there. Nobody had a clue how it got there. The only other people that were allowed in that had keys were cleaning equipment. So unless God told one of the people that cleaned at night to put it in there. I love that story so much. And like you said, we've had so many financial challenges through the years where God's done something. But that one reminds me that he even knows the little things that I need, but we have, before we moved to Colorado, we had made a financial decision. We owned our own company and we worked together, and we felt the Lord say, shut it down. And we're like, okay. And it was actually a Beanie Baby business. And we did shows. We traveled all over during that time. My husband didn't have to work for 3 years, like literally, because it was such a God thing that we were in it anyway. But anyway, we felt like God said, shut it down. And we made one last decision because we did not wait for his voice to tell us we had to make one decision about purchasing this one batch of bears. And we didn't wait for God's answer. And it put us in debt. And it wasn't a big debt. We hadn't been in debt. We got married out of debt. We just have never been into debt. But all of a sudden we found ourselves into debt. And I'm telling you, we were like determined to get out of debt. And we went to this, we had an invitation from Turnaround Ministries. So if there's anybody out there, I hope they're still around. Turnaround Ministries, if you've ever had financial situation come in your life that it just is way too big for you, if you can ever sign up, you have to be accepted to go in. Anyway, the deal was, what I felt like while we were there was, when you come back, don't put one more thing on a credit card. Do not put one. And we weren't, we used our credit cards, but for the benefits, we always paid it off. As soon as I drive in from getting back from this trip to go get our groceries, my car won't start. All of a sudden it dies in the parking lot. And I'm like, well, come to find out, it was just a battery. So it's under $100. That's good. That's $100 that was now going to come out of the budget that I was walking into the grocery store with. And I stood there, and there was 4 of us at that time. And I thought, what am I going to put back? Because I said, I'm not going to charge this on the card. And because I was obedient, I am not kidding you. At first, it seemed like, God, where are you? Why did you let this happen? Because I was an orphan back then, I didn't understand his goodness. But 1 month after another, we miraculously would get checks in the mail from states that we didn't know anybody. Someone would come up in the Bible study and say, hey, someone just walked up to me and said, are you Tammy here? I'm supposed to give you something. Like one thing after another. But see, if I wouldn't have obeyed God in the store, I wouldn't have given him the opportunity to be able to move on my behalf. If I would have relied on my credit card, and that's, I don't mean to, I'm not trying to bring condemnation, but you know what, God, we have to make room for God to move, guys. We cannot say, I'm just going to use my credit card this time because God didn't come through. That's not true. He wants to partner with us and be a part of it. And if we're using that credit card to come to our rescue, then we're not making room for him.
Yeah, there is a difference between asking.
Yeah.
You're hearing I'm hearing myself. Do you hear myself twice?
Nope, I hear you all right.
Okay. There's a difference in what you just said about having a crutch and having a faith. And we have to understand, and for all of us, that's different. And we have to recognize, what is he asking us to do? Because in your situation, he was asking you not to put anything on your credit card. And other times he's just like, do you trust me? What does trust look like? And so we're not going to tell you what your answer is. We're just asking you, where's your trust in God? Do you trust that he will or that he won't? And I mean, we have so many stories of God showing up in all these kind of amazing ways. And all of these really are testimonies to say, hey, God, do that again for me. Because you got her out of debt, show me how to get out of debt. You provided for Tammy's groceries, show me how you're going to provide for my groceries. It's not necessarily the how, it's the who.
Yeah.
And it's about recognizing that this is outside of our control. And I think that's where I had to get to myself. I had to get to the place where it was completely out of my control, because God, and I think I shared this a couple weeks ago, God wanted to show me that I was trusting in myself. That my independence was really my fear of being dependent on God. And so what that looked like for me to be like, okay, little Miss Control Freak, let's see how we're going to have you let go. And that was painful. And for what I was grasping onto and what God had to pry out of my fingers is very different. But at the end of the day, it came down to, I'm going to show you how to trust me. And when I do, he's so, so good. And you talked about this, we'll have to talk about, and we'll have to, we'll definitely have to talk about that orphan spirit, because I think that's something that not everybody understands. And there's a difference between what that looks like to be having this orphan spirit to constantly think that we're only going to get our needs met or not going to get our needs met, versus the daughter who is his favorite, who he's like, you know what? Like, I want to give you the desires of your heart. And then he says in Ephesians, more than you can ask or imagine. That's not poverty. That's imagine. Like, what do you want to ask or imagine? And he wants to give you exceedingly abundantly more than that, which means it starts with, what are you imagining? What are you thinking about? What are you asking God for? Is it just to meet your needs? Or is there a vision for the future? Because if there's a vision for the future, like I know there is for you, Tammy, and I know there is for me, I can't do what God has asked me to do inside the boundaries of my family's finances, period. I can't. It's not possible. So I need to trust God to make sure that the resources come in for what he's asking me to do before I take the step, as I take the step. Sometimes in trust, I take the step and say, okay, I'm going to do this, God. I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. Now, that is not advice I recommend to everybody. Have a good talk to some good spiritual advisors before you step out and say, I think God told me to do this. But I remember when I was making a significant investment in my business. This is about the time you and I met, Tammy. When I was making a significant investment into my business, and my husband was freaking out about it. He's like, you want to invest how much? Now, it's more than the $5,000 air conditioning, just to tell you. But it was a significant investment. I had never done anything like this, investing in myself, investing and growing my business. And I felt like that was where the Lord was pointing. There were so many confirmations, and yet I had to have his agreement, because there was just it wasn't going to come from anywhere. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so he wrestled with God, and I'm convinced he's a 9 on the Enneagram. So he's a body processor. So he goes into the gym and he's playing his, like, I don't even know what kind of music it was. And he's just, getting his frustration out on the gym equipment. And he hears from the Lord about, like, trusting him, and, not to put his, strength in himself, or worrying about where this is going to come from, and trusting God. So here he was so at a place where I am not in agreement. And I was like, I will not make this investment without unity. I absolutely won't. So God, if this is your will, then you need to turn the heart of my husband. And we know that happened because Mary and Joseph, there's an example where here we find Mary, she's pregnant, and she has to get Joseph in alignment with, I did not cheat. And so here I have to come to my husband with, like, this is what I feel like God is asking me to do, and I need you to come into alignment with it, or I can't move forward. And to trust God to do that. And so to be able to get to the place that we are not just trusting God for our provision, we're trusting God for alignment inside of our marriages, for when we need to go forward in something, and trusting God for provision and finances, to move into that next step. And I tell you what, we paid for what I needed completely debt-free, because God, at the end of it, I did not see it coming. He brought me a consulting project that paid for it. I wasn't looking to go consulting. I wasn't looking to go back into the business world for a small stint, but he paid for it. And I'm like, God, I didn't see it. I didn't see the provision. And sometimes we are in our little bubble, and we only see the boundaries of our finances, and that's wise. But God is outside of time, and he sees what's coming. He knows what he's already prepared for us. He knows the purpose is coming. He knows the provision is coming. And so I just want to say to you that trust the Lord. If he's put in a vision in your heart, he will align the right people to come and give you money at church. He will align the right people to bring you business. He will do what he needs to do to make sure you can fulfill what he's asked. And, so, I mean, this is,
my heart, and I know your heart too, is that we expose these lies. So we cannot go without first talking about what are some of the barriers or the lies that are actually preventing us from trusting God. Because every one of us, everybody that's watching, Andrea, Shirley, Melissa, all of you, we all want to trust God, right? But sometimes there's things that are actually preventing us. And so I wrote down a couple of things that I know that were difficult for me, that were making me not be able to trust God every time in my finance. And that was let me look at it. One, not feeling like God was really good all the time.
Ooh.
Oh my goodness, that was such a biggie for me. And so because I didn't know he was good all the time, I thought he picked and chose, when he was going to come through for me. That really caused me, like you said, control. I took control because I didn't think God was going to come through. So that was a biggie for me. Can you think of any other things that we might be believing, or problems that are causing us not to trust the God that we know is faithful? We know he's good, but we're really struggling to trust him.
Yeah, that's so good. And then, so there's the God is not good enough, or I am not good enough, or there's the, God helps those who helps themselves. I'm sorry, but that is not in the scripture. Faith does require action, but our action is strategic and it comes from the Lord, and we can talk about that. But really, it's just about saying, God, first of all, I had to realize that my anxiety was lying to me. I had to realize that my confidence in myself was lying to me. I had to realize that I had to do this myself, or that I couldn't accept something from someone else, because then if someone were to come and give me $20, what did that, am I the one that needs that? Or does somebody else need it more? When God is really just trying to bless you and show you that he's got all of this along the way. So I think there was some of that. And then there was I really had to come face to face with fear of what it looked like to be dependent on God. Yes. Do I deserve? Thank you, Shirley. That's so powerful.
Shirley,
Because yes, because we like to think, should it be me, or should it be somebody else? Yeah. Am I worth the investment? Ooh.
Or I messed up. Like you said before, it wasn't your fault that you were in this situation. But what if you did make a choice?
Yeah.
We did make a choice. We should have waited. But you know what? God's not there to add condemnation and heap that on us. But if we would have just rejected all that because we thought we weren't worthy, right? That is a good one.
And there's a difference we have to realize that God is a God of favor, and he likes opportunities to show off. And he just loves it. And so when we're looking and we have an expectancy for God to show up and show off and show how good he is, then it's a little bit easier to trust him. And for those of you where this is baby steps, we were there. I had to crawl myself to the place of trusting God where I am right now. But it really started out with answering that question of, does he have me in the palm of his hand? And he writes to tell us that, he cares about the clothes of the lilies of the valley. And these are flowers. And he cares about the birds. And if one falls, he knows about it. And if that's birds and flowers, and we are created in his image and his likeness, we are called his children, we are co-heirs with Christ, there's a level of expectancy of inheritance that comes with that we often don't invite ourselves to be a part of. And so a lie that I had was that there was a limit to what God could provide. And so now now my vision is open to a sense that, okay, I used to be expecting you just for my needs, which is fine, because he says he's going to meet our needs. He says he knows our needs before we even ask. Then he challenges us, what is it you ask or imagine? And so to be able to sit in that place, and as Habakkuk says, write the vision and make it plain. What is the vision? What is that he is putting inside of you that you can't provide for? Because that's where he wants to meet you with faith. That's where he wants to meet you with trust. And I think I was limited. I think I put a cap on myself because I thought, I can do that when I can afford it. Instead of saying, God, are you calling me to do this? And if you are, how? What, and then begin to trust him and say, show me signs that this is the right thing to do. And then, and what is my first step to step out and say yes? Is it just in my heart? Or are you asking me to make an investment in myself? Are you asking me to seed into somebody else? Because here's something else that I realized the power of is when I was asking God to provide something for me, I needed to find somebody who was walking through something similar and blessed them. And so sometimes it was seed faith. Sometimes it was, okay, I see that somebody else needs something and I'm going to go bless them. Or they have already survived that. And I'm going to go acknowledge that God has shown up and provided in their life, because we all hear people and tell their stories and their testimony of what God did. Or maybe we, hear something about God showing up for someone else, and be able to acknowledge where God is moving in someone else and say, I see that. I see God's faithfulness in your life, because sometimes it's just all we can do to get through. And when someone else acknowledges that they finally see us moving, man, isn't that an answer to prayer? So I think sometimes it was like, me putting limits on it, me not seeing the progress I was making. All of those things were lies about, is God really going to provide? Is he providing now? Because provision is a whole lot more than finances for me.
Yeah.
I need community. I need all kinds of different things I need God to provide for outside of just finances. So, that's.
Yeah. And if you guys are watching, or even if you're not, you're watching live or you're not, later on, put in the comments, is there something that you struggle to believe? Or is there a lie that you're tempted to believe that might be holding you back in this area? Because there are so many minute things that we think that can stand in the way. I love it that you brought up earlier. Oh, shoot, you just said it, and I was going to say something about it, but you said it earlier. Oh, well, first of all, I'm going to say this. You know what? We have to get out of the mindset that there's a pattern or a 5-step thing. And I think you alluded to that. We have to ask God, what is his plan? I love that you brought that up, because it's really important, because I think that's where a lot of us get frustrated. We say, but God, I've been tithing, but God. And we list all the things, but God, that we did, and it's not working. Well, it's very important for us not to put God into a 5-step program, and to really ask him. I remember something very silly that God asked me to do once. And this was when we were first trying to get out of that season of debt. And I typically was the kind of person where I plan a little bit. I'm not overly planning, but if my kids ate peanut butter and it was on sale, I would go ahead and grab a couple, so that it lasted. And next time, maybe it was back on sale again. And so I would do that. And when we were in that season, he said, Tammy, I went to go get 2 peanut butters because it was on sale. And he said, don't do that. Just get the one. And I immediately felt like, yeah, but, and this is so silly, but this is the kind of stuff that we think and we got to deal with. I thought, yeah, but it's on sale right now. And when I know my kids are going to eat it, it may not be on sale. And he says, Tammy, you don't trust that I can make it go on sale at the right time when you run out? I mean, he was getting all up in my business. You know what I mean? Like, he was really dealing with those little things in my heart that I just so easily ignored, and I was like, okay. And sure enough, I put it back, and I'm not kidding you. The moment he did that in so many ways, and he wants to. And you said something earlier that just almost really brought me to tears when you said, God loves to show up and show off. And I immediately thought about that day that I was a 19-year-old girl whose life had been so messed up, a brand new believer. And I walk into my office in that exam room, and there is that lighted mirror. And how he must have been leaping for joy and excitement watching me be moved to tears. And I think, man, in every area that we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks, is that if we don't see that is how kind, that is how good, that is how much he's wrapped up in us, we're going to miss out on so much.
And what I love about our conversations is when we shine light on these lies, like, do you trust me for the next tube of peanut butter? Or do you trust me for this vision that I put inside you? Or do you trust me? When we can face off the lies that get in the way of us saying yes to believing the truth that God says, he says he's his provider. That's his name, Jehovah Jireh. He got that name at Mount Moriah with Abraham sacrificing Isaac, right? So like the pinnacle of providing a ram in the thicket, right? Is that moment. And if he's going to provide, if that's where he got his name, we can tap into him and say, God, this is who you are. And so I'm asking you to be who you are. Be who you are. He's not a man that he can lie. He's going to be who he is when we invite him in. And it's like and he will tell us where our action stops and he starts. Like, okay, buy that one thing of peanut butter, or, and I will provide for them. He will tell us where our action needs to stop. And I love that you said we're not to put him in a box. We're not to put him in a 5-step program. I am a firm believer in tithe. I declare the tither's blessing over myself. I rebuke the devourer. I do all of those things. I ask for it to be shaken up and measured and poured out and all that. I do that. But to also recognize that when I come to God with my finances and I come to God, I say, okay, I'm asking you to bless it and multiply it and cause all kinds of, it's just a strategy that he gives each of us. And let me just kind of explain this just a smidge. When we are looking in the Bible and we're seeing all of these different references to people in storms, sometimes Jesus stands up and says, peace be still. Sometimes the Lord tells Paul, nope, your boat's going to crash, but you're not going to die. So the strategy was different in those two storms. So we can't always think it's going to be the same every time. We have to come to the Lord and say, what is my strategy for now? And this is why I love working with the women I work with. It's because we get an opportunity to say, okay, let's take what we know and take what we're hearing from God and say, what's the strategy for now? And this is why we work with the women we do, Tammy. It's because we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to kind of say, all right, we're not going to put God in a box. We're going to demolish the lies and we're going to say, God, what are you asking? And it really comes down to how do we hear the Lord for us, for our provision and our finances and what he's asking us to do. What do you have to say about that?
I love that, because God's not about us just marking off a bunch of checklists. He wants intimacy and partnership and to be in with us, involved in it. So I love that. Throw away the list unless he actually gives you the things to put down on the list.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage everybody that if you're saying, you know what, guys, that sounds really good, but I've been trying a lot of that and it's not working, then there's a reason. There is a reason. It's not because God has rejected you. It is not because he's mad at you. It's not because you did something that's made him say, oh, sorry, you're on your own. You made your bed, lie in it. That is not the way that God is. But I want to encourage you to get alone with him and find out, is it something that you believe about him that's a lie? Or is it something that you believe about yourself, or you believe about money that's a lie? Because God is good and he's for you. And he's not the kind of God who's going to say, oh, like for us, he didn't say, well, y'all prayed about it. That's good. But you didn't wait for an answer. Oh, sorry. You're going to be in debt for the next 3 years. No, he said, okay, let's go to town. Let's get a plan. Let's figure this out. He's good. He's really good.
He is good. And we just declare that over you. We declare over you the goodness of God. And he says that, I mean, I just feel the presence of God on this conversation. I'm sure you do too, Tammy, where it's like, he wants to meet with you. And so if it's taking all of these things that you're waiting for him to provide on, these areas of wants, these areas of, hey, I messed up and I need restoration. I need recovery. He's good at that. He is good at prodigal finances. He's good at that. He can restore and redeem. That's what he's done. Salvation is his MO. He can do that. There's plenty of grace. There's also a measure of faith he wants you to tap into when he pulls us to a place of stretching, because without the stretch, we can't grow. And without the waiting, we can't have an expectancy of what's coming. And I'm in a season of waiting for God's provision for the next thing. And I'm waiting for God to say, okay, this is the next step. You can take it. Or, hold on a minute. because for one reason or another. So if you're in that holding pattern where you are waiting for God, the delay necessarily isn't about you. It could be somebody else. And there's this testimony that I have where I want to be careful in how I talk about it, but there was somebody I know that was waiting for a job, and they knew they were called to a certain city to go work in a particular job, and they knew where they were going, and the job hadn't opened yet. And so they had to take a job at Starbucks to feed their family. And so he's learning how to be a barista, and now coffee's a major part of his ministry, but he's waiting for this job to open up. And the person that's in that job is in disobedience. They have been told they need to leave. They've been asked by the Lord that they need to leave and go someplace else. And they're in disobedience. So here's this other person who's in obedience, who's waiting for the opportunity to open, and they can't get in there because someone else is being disobedient. So perhaps this word is for somebody today. You're waiting for the right opportunity. You have been obedient, but perhaps where you're going is not ready yet because there's something happening in that situation which isn't yet open to you, even though you're doing everything right. Trust God. He's got it all worked out, and he's got the timing. He will work it all out to your good. That's what it says in Romans 8:28.
That's right. Because he is good.
He is good all the time.
Next Tuesday at 12:30 again, we are going to be talking about the lie, and I'm not sure. I think I might want to talk about the goodness of God, the lie that I didn't think God was really good. And I'm telling you, it's so easy to say God's good. None of us, unless we have just kind of turned our back on God, would ever say that God is not good. But I believed that he wasn't good all the time. And I doubted his motives. I doubted his faithfulness. So we're going to talk about the lie of, is God really good? So that's what we'll talk about next Tuesday.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you.
I loved hearing your story.
Oh, thanks. This is so fun.
Yes. Well, thanks, guys. Shirley, Joy, Melisa, Andrea. We are so glad that you guys could join us live. We will see you guys next week.
Yes. And for those of you watching in the replay, just drop a comment and let us know you were here.
Yeah, please. And if you have a topic that you want us to talk about, a lie, and even if you don't want it, in the comments, message either one of us, private message either one of us. Let us know kind of what topic or what lie you might feel like you're stuck in. Because sometimes we don't know that we're believing a lie. Sometimes we do know we're believing a lie, but we don't know how to get out of it. So if you don't want to do that, publicly, please don't even hesitate to reach out to us and let us know. And we'll be happy to consider that topic.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you next week.